Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friends List. I'm your host, Christopher Thomas Plante, and I am joined today by my pal, news editor Brian Crecente. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great.
There was some news that happened this weekend, or maybe news, depending on where you read it. It sounds like YouTube, or Google, is looking to acquire Twitch. And that is fascinating for a number of reasons, which we're going to get into in today's show. But first, for the people who don't know, what is Twitch?
Hold on a second. I'm Googling Twitch right now to figure it out.
Okay,
no.
Cool.
Twitch.
The thing that my eye does when you do that.
That's exactly what Twitch is. Twitch is essentially a service for streaming, live streaming, your gameplay. That's basically what it is. You could do a bunch of other things with it, but the main way people use Twitch is they sign into it and they start playing a video game, and that video game is then video from that game is streamed across your channel to Twitch, the website. And often they'll have a picture-in-picture. They'll put a little box like right down here, little box. Maybe we're doing that. Can we do that right now? A little box right there?
Sure.
No. A little box right there, and it's a little head of you talking while the gameplay is happening, and people watch it. My son doesn't watch TV anymore. He watches Twitch. That's his YouTube and Twitch are the only two things he watches anymore. That's what Twitch is.
And there's an entire community that has built around this. There are stars, essentially, who will play maybe StarCraft, appropriate, and they'll get subscribers, and there's an entire cottage industry around this whole thing. And it's an absolutely ginormous website at this point.
I was about to say, I don't know if you can call it a cottage industry. It's more of a mansion industry. 45 million monthly users and about 4,000 content providers. Those are the people who actually play the games and commentate upon that gameplay while doing so. I tried to make that as awkward as possible.
Thank you.
So, yeah, they have a whole bunch of people who are creating videos and a whole bunch of people who are watching those people create videos. And most recently, we've seen some pretty big things happen on Twitch. That includes the integration of Twitch and other streaming services on the PlayStation 4. So integrated that, of course, there is a button that says share on it. And you press that button, you can start sharing your content in a number of ways, one of which is Twitch. Microsoft saw the popularity of that, and they had already been working on it, but I think they sort of kicked their system in the butt a little bit to try to get it up faster. Some interesting facts, the camera for the PlayStation 4, people noticed when the PlayStation 4 first came out, they couldn't find that camera anywhere. When I spoke with Shuhei Yoshida, head of Worldwide Studios for Sony, he told me that was because of Twitch. So this is a big deal in gaming. More recently, we've seen a little more sort of interesting, innovative uses of Twitch, one of which would be Twitch Plays Pokemon, which was someone went out and figured out a way to get a game of Pokemon to automatically react to the comments in a Twitch stream so that an audience could massively control a single game of Pokemon. And now we're starting to see bigger utilization of things like that in bigger games, AAA games, where you can do things like scare people while they're playing a game by doing stuff in a Twitch commenting system.
We've also seen that it's turned certain single-player games into almost multiplayer experiences, in Spelunky being one of my favorite examples of that, where here is a game that seemingly is a pretty straightforward adventure, and there are all these groups now who are playing it competitively against each other with arbitrary goals and rule sets that they're creating within the community. So we are going to beat this in this allotted amount of time with just these items. And then you see who can do the best run of that. It's interesting. It's making people play games in a way that I feel like they didn't before, where it's communal but not multiplayer. I don't know. It's interesting.
It is. I think what it's doing is in some ways taking the best of the original way people played video games, which was in arcades when you had a bunch of buddies around you, and adding into it things that you maybe couldn't do in arcades. I guess you could. I guess you could kind of reach over and slap someone's button while they're playing the game or cover their eyes. But in general, it's taking that sense of community and that sense of involvement and allowing you not just to passively watch somebody play, but actually have direct impact in their experience, which is pretty amazing. And even if you remove that sort of innovation with Twitch, just the ability to watch people play, you know, people like to do that. I'm not a huge fan of watching other people play games. Maybe that's because I grew up in the arcade era, but there are a lot of
Yeah.
people who enjoy doing that. Again, I always bring up my son. He's my test subject for that younger generation. He's just turned 13. All of his friends are constantly on streaming services watching people play games while they play games, while they have the TV on. It's super weird. I think Microsoft in their movement into TV is acknowledging this. They understand that television, as we traditionally know it, is sort of dying, and that while original programming still has a place in this new landscape, it's a place that's on many levels, even with the place that content creators have, and those people are essentially gamers who play games and can say witty things at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's talk about why YouTube would want to acquire Twitch, because at first blush, I guess to like the layman or the person who just doesn't dwell on these things all day,
Let's call that the plant. No, I'm kidding.
let's call that me. Here's a giant company that,
Right.
in theory, is an expert at video services. Why are they wanting to buy a streaming corporation instead of just making their own?
Right. I mean, YouTube is massive. It's owned by a massive company, Google. They are, in many ways, the king of video. What they're not the king of is streaming. They do some streaming, and they've experimented with streaming, trying to sort of reach out to gamers who stream with mixed reaction. They invested pretty heavily in Machinima a while ago, and seemingly, I don't know why it is that didn't seem to work out as well as one would think it did, but seemingly it didn't. Warner Brothers, I think, more recently also invested in Machinima, so it seems like Machinima didn't become the thing that maybe YouTube wanted it to be. Um, I will say, just last year, and this continues to be an issue, YouTube ran into a lot of problems with copyright infringement and content creators and networks that host multitudes of content creators like Machinima. And I think that created a lot of bad blood between many gamers who stream and YouTube. It's interesting because on one level, if let's say they do purchase Twitch, already we're seeing, just in the rumors of that happening, we're seeing a very strong and very negative reaction by a group of people online who game. And I think that's all driven by the fact that people feel like YouTube is a little too careful about copyright infringement, or maybe not careful. Just the way they handle it isn't very good. It's too automated. And there are a lot of other things that people don't like about YouTube, like the way you sign into the account and some of the other controls they have. There's an upside for YouTube, but only at this point, only if they don't screw around with it. Like if they bring in Twitch and make it YouTube streaming and call it Twitch, it's going to be a disaster. I think what they need to do is either leave it alone and just reap the reward, or if they implement it into Twitch, make it an implementation that keeps it in a bubble so that YouTube doesn't YouTube it up, so to speak.
Sure. And I'm curious what happens legally from the developer's point of view. If this, acquisition happens and say Twitch is on YouTube and somebody goes on and they stream all of, let's use a linear narrative game like The Last of Us, right?
Right.
I have friends who don't play games anymore, but they do watch all of them. While they're at work, they'll watch through The Last of Us, or they'll watch through Portal, or these games that they enjoyed but don't have the money or time to play. And I'm sure in the developer's mind, that's a lost purchase. That is no different than streaming an entire movie. And obviously, this is a much bigger, more controversial issue, because we've also seen the opposite for mini games, especially indie games, where showing up on a YouTube stream increases sales dramatically. But from the developer's point of view of these big games, legally, I'm curious how they don't end up coming after YouTube if somebody's doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, if this deal happens, at the minimum, it's going to create a need for a reexamination of how this is handled across the board. Because on the one hand, like you said, there's two sides to this argument. You can't just dismiss it. You can't say as content creators, it's not fair. You can't say as game developers, how dare you? If you want this to work, there needs to be an intelligent conversation between those two groups of people. This, I think, was part of the problem that YouTube ran into. There was no intelligent conversation. It was just, hey, we're going to seemingly arbitrarily start to enforce the rules we've always had. Do you like how I keep leading into this like I'm at a congressional hearing?
Yeah.
Yes, Senator. So I think it will. I think it will. I hope it will start that conversation in a more meaningful way, and it will include the voices of people who are not just game makers, and certainly not just the attorneys who seemingly arbitrarily go out and like send out these cease and desists left and right without talking to anybody. I hope it's really just a conversation between game makers and game players, and maybe we can come up with a system that makes sense. Maybe they can figure out a way where everybody is happy. And like, really, why hasn't that happened yet? That seems kind of strange. This is a big business.
And I'm hoping this is a good time to do that before anything were to happen, because, I mean, the other thing is a big publisher has a duty to respect its brands and protect its IP in a certain way. This is the issue that happened with Scrolls. Remember the whole kerfluffle when Bethesda sued the creators, Mojang, or creators of Minecraft, about their second game. And it's this thing where, well, if you don't protect it here, then if you keep showing negligence, then what if you actually do want to sue somebody later? It's just such a mess, and it seems like it needs to be worked out, and like you said, with a serious conversation, rather than putting it off until something legitimate actually happens, and then everybody's heated and it blows up in their face.
So that's the good thing to do, but the reality is, if they're really in serious talks about this right now, there's no way in hell they're having that conversation. Like this, you don't have that conversation in the middle of a $1 billion deal to acquire a company. So best case, if the deal's going through, is that they have that conversation as soon, like they announce that deal, and in that announcement say, we're also going to be having this conversation because we want this to work. We don't want, I can't remember what it is now, but I've already seen people moving from Twitch onto a new service, and I've forgotten the name of it, unfortunately. But there are competitors out there. There's several, if not more than several, people who do this, and I'm sure they'd love to take on the people who feel like they're running away from the bureaucracy of YouTube.
In the man. So let's use that as a chance to hop into the comments. We both polled some people on Twitter. I don't know if you have any replies, but I'm going to share some of the ones I have. Eric Schneider said, I asked for the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. Eric Schneider said the good, more servers so TPP-like things don't crash it. Integrating with YouTube could broaden esports to the masses easily. The bad is Google Plus integration, and lots of people have copyright worries. Another example, Jordan Mallory, best, Twitch starts running on Google servers. It's more stable with better stream quality. The worst is Content ID activates on Twitch. So that's what we're talking about with all the legal implications of the developer possibly wanting to protect its games and properties. Rick Stern, worst case, YouTube does nothing with Twitch and lets it rot. Best case, truly integrates into YouTube and Google's other platforms. And Carla Valachi, best case is probably an easier way of uploading streams and videos to YouTube. And Lauren Bednar, worst case is the Earth or Sun explodes, which I have to agree, that would be pretty terrible.
Yeah, I think as a worst case goes, that's probably the worst case.
Did you have any replies you wanted to share?
I actually asked people what sort of questions and ideas they wanted discussed, and some of those, I'm looking through them right now. It brings up some interesting points. These questions bring up interesting points. So one is Corey Schwanz wants to know, I'd like to know some of the positive things about this deal. Everyone is concerned it will be the end of the world. Really? And I think he, in asking that question, it's a good point. It's easy to focus on this sort of vocal minority in these cases where you have people hopping on Twitter, other social media, YouTube, funny enough, and talking about the negative implications. But if you step back, like, one would think that if Google is spending $1 billion on this, there's someone at the company who's like, hey, I have an idea. When we spend $1 billion, let's not completely screw it up. How about that?
Yeah.
Like they're not going in to like screw things up.
One of our other Twitter commenters, Havoc TMA, said Twitch will have access to more resources to make the site even better for more users and more types of gaming, which I think is pretty hitting the nail on the head. Resources compared to what Twitch has now, I mean, are insane. The amount of money that potentially could be funneled into it. And the other thing is, it's more than likely that YouTube is interested in this technology not just for gaming, that they could make Twitch a much bigger thing than it is. They could be bigger and better at games, but it could be doing all sorts of things that it isn't currently able to do right now because it has to focus, just to get sold.
Yeah, I mean, so I have actually, it's interesting. There's two things I wanted to mention about that. First off, the whole idea of having access to more technology from Twitch's side. Twitch has been evolving a lot. It's been growing a lot. As I mentioned, they've brought it to consoles. They brought it to mobile recently, where you can actually stream if the game supports it. You could stream an iPhone game and yourself playing the game, which is, I think, really neat, really incredible. But they've also been hit with several outages in the past, I'd say 6 months, all of which have been tied to things like Twitch Plays Pokemon or the launch of the PS4. When you look at this deal, and obviously we don't know a lot about Twitch because they're not a public company, but one would think one of the things that they're looking at right now is the infrastructure that Google can offer. They need that infrastructure. They seem to be struggling to keep up with it. Google 100% is going to solve that problem. Like, that's a no-brainer. That if they came in and literally all they did was give them their infrastructure, it'd be a win-win for everybody. So that's interesting. The other point that you mentioned, I've already forgotten. What was the other point?
I think that's pretty good. I think you got it.
All right, fine.
I think there's also the fact that most of the people who work there are going to be filthy rich if this happens. I think that's a pretty big motivator. I think the infrastructure is good. I think the payout is probably pretty appealing to people who work there.
I think the real question we're all wondering is, why don't I have any sort of direct ownership of Twitch right now?
Or a tech company right now?
Yeah, I think right.
It seems like they're all just going for billions at this point.
I feel like as much as I've watched Twitch, I should get like $1 million. That's
sure,
right? That's fair. That's the question. It's going through everybody's head.
That's definitely not how you make a profitable business, but sure, why not?
All I care about is me. That's fair, right? Isn't that what we're all thinking?
I think that's good. I think this is a good place to end it. I think we've come up with the ultimate tech company. We're going to move to Silicon Valley. We're going to create a website that pays the people who visit it. It's going to be the biggest website in the world, not profitable at all, and will sell for $3 billion.
Okay, wait. I like the idea. One twist. We will pay them after we go public for $1 billion or more. And here's the big thing. You ready? Mm-hmm. We're going to promise to pay them, but we're not going to.
Oh, wow. That's really that's bold. That's bold.
It's innovative thinking.
It's certainly a choice.
All right.
Well, thank you for joining tonight. Coming up with the worst plan ever. I appreciate it. And thank you, viewers, for being complicit in this crime that we're about to commit. We are committing crimes here every day, every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on Polygon.com or on YouTube.com/Polygon. We're also a podcast. We're called Friends List. You'll see that on iTunes. You know what? Subscribe. Maybe leave a review. That would go a long way for us. Until next time, thank you for joining me today, Brian. And we will see you later. Goodbye.